for me. Great, thank you. So welcome everyone to the Graduate Open event here at UCL. Today I'm going to be talking about the MSc Physics and Engineering in Medicine, by the distance learning route specifically. We normally organise a separate session for this just because a lot of students who come to the course have not studied by distance learning before. So the aim of today really is to sort of show in more detail exactly how we teach you by distance learning and how what skills you'll need to join the course, and then hopefully a good guide of what you can expect if you study with us um, as well. So I think more than anything else, our course is sort of fulfilling the philosophy of UCL's motto from a few years ago, which was to change the world, you need to be taught differently. That's certainly the case for us. At UCL, there are a number of distance learning courses, and we're part of that community, but it's still a relatively unusual method. But it allows a lot of extra benefits for you as students, which is why many students choose to study that way. So, first of all, to introduce myself, I'm Billy Dennis. I am the program tutor for the course by distance learning. I've been at UCL for about 14 years, and I've been running this distance learning course since then. So it's been well established over a number of years. I also am the postgraduate programs director. So this course is embedded in our postgraduate programs in the department, and there's a community of students that go across those postgraduate programs. So you, as a distance learning student, it's important that you also take part in those activities at the same time. So I'm in a good position, hopefully, as course lead to show you some of those things as well. So as a department, we've got various strengths as a department, but particularly we are based in our excellent world-leading research. Um, that's the major benefit of you from studying with us. You get to be taught by world-leading experts who are at the cutting edge and are developing new technologies every year that get then taught in our courses afterwards as well. And they also supervise research projects. So you as master students will get to do good research projects with these world-leading researchers as well. Um, but we also know our students really well, and that's particularly the case on the distance learning course. We don't want you to be isolated. We want you to have interactions with us, the academics, as we go through the course, not just myself as the personal tutor and the program director for the course, but also all the lecturers as you go through as well. So we've got a philosophy of really interacting with our students as much as we can. We want you to be part of the department, and we want you to contribute in that way, and we also want to support you as you're doing that. The final strength of the department, really, of the main parts, is that because we're based in central London, amongst a number of world-leading hospitals with lots of innovative clinical work, we use those connections to share with you guys as students as well. So you'll get access to all the various London institutions as students, and then that includes you as distance learning students as well. Everyone still requires a distance learning research project. They may be based at one of those hospitals. You might not be able to attend live in person to meet patients or to do specific measurements there, but you still have access to the research projects and the data that we do there. You'll also be taught by a number of clinicians that are based in those hospitals. So last week, we had a separate open day series where we met the postgraduate team in the department, and you got to hope if you've seen that talk, you'll see the range of different postgraduate courses we've got here. This is the postgraduate team who you'll be occasionally interacting with as lecturers or potentially in other ways as well. The two main people you'll probably be seeing most of is myself as the program director for distance learning, and potentially Dr. Rob Moss, who leads the radiation physics stream, which is what the distance learning stream specializes in. But a number of other staff here that you might have met last week. In terms of what our department offers, there's a number of different research groups. We are a multidisciplinary subject with many different research expertise. The fundamental philosophy of the department really is to bring your outside expertise and apply it into a medical treatment or diagnostic area. And so that means we do have many different research areas, more than perhaps most departments here at UCL. But we specialize mostly in medical imaging the various different imaging modalities. We've got expertise across all the most commonly used ones, and where there's a number of groups that are developing new methods themselves that will hopefully be part of clinics or are going to be put in part of clinics very soon. There's a massive expertise in the department in computation as well, in various different methods, looking at methods to treat cancer in a more effective way. It looks at computing to support diagnostic tools, in surgery, and certainly in radiotherapy, which forms a major part of this MSc as well. There's groups in radiation physics who look specifically at radiation detectors that does apply into the medical field, but sometimes outside of it as well. Also in robotics and surgical devices that help treatments of patients through robotics or and diagnostics as well. Um, and then also implanted devices. So in terms of making measurements about the human body, various physiological ones, including electrical stimulation, including neuromodulation. So firing electrical signals into the brain to try and activate certain areas, but also particular strength in optical monitoring using visible light rather than X-ray light as well. So some things that you might see as part of the course or as part of your research projects with us. Our department, briefly in numbers, so around 50 permanent academic staff, around 55 postdoctoral research staff. So these are the senior researchers in the department amongst them. And then we've got a group of around 35 professional services staff as well who support all the activity in the department, including you as students as well. Just, you don't really need to know too much about this, but as a department, we've got around 500 undergraduates based in two programs, medical physics and biomedical engineering, both with slightly different focuses. And then taught postgraduate students, we've got around 100 that includes the distance learning cohort in there as well. We've also got a number of PhD students, and that may be something that some of you are interested in going on to after a master's degree as well. We look to recruit our master's students into PhD because we already know them well, and hopefully you've done a really good master's project first. Just to give you a little bit of a history of the MSc program, Physics and Engineering and Medicine, its origins really goes back to 1958 as the first, at the time, the first MSc in radiation physics, which was based at the University of London, which UCL was a part of. It was set up by Sir Joseph Rotblat, whose picture you can see on the right here. He's a Nobel laureate. He is famous for a number of different things, really. Um, but ultimately, he ended up moving from the areas of radiation physics that were being applied in weaponry. He was part of the UK contingent that went to the Los Alamos for the Manhattan Project to develop a nuclear bomb in the Second World War. He was also the first scientist to resign from that process on ethical grounds once it was made clear that there was not going to be other nations with the nuclear bomb at the time. So he resigned. That was one part of the motivation for that. And that formed the future of his career by insisting that he then went on to develop a number of different initiatives that were using radiation physics for humanitarian purposes. And one of them was setting up the master's course at the University of London, which at the time was based at St Bartholomew's Hospital, Medical Physics Department. In the 1980s, there was a merger between St Bartholomew's Hospital and UCLH, and the medical physics groups of both of them that formed our department. So a number of the scientists from St Bart's are still in our department right now. Professor Robert Speller is an example of one, but obviously over time that group has now evolved and grown much more into our department. Joseph Rotblat also got the Nobel Peace Prize in the 1960s for the similar areas because he set up the Pugwash conferences, which was part of the start of the campaign for nuclear disarmament that happened in the 1960s and 70s, where nations agreed basically not to use nuclear bombs and not to test nuclear bombs as well. A major initiative, which, another output of essentially his career. A very famous guy, a father of the department, if you like. So a very interesting history certainly there. But that MSc that he set up at St Bart's that came to UCL as a part of the merger with UCLH continued throughout the years. And then in 2011, the distance learning version of that course was set up to aim to replicate the exact same masters that was taught on campus for many years as well. And that is this MSc. And then we had our first graduates in 2013, which is when I personally joined the course as well to help run and tutor students on the course. In 2015, the course was accredited by IPEM, which is the Institute of Physics and Engineering Medicine, the UK's national body that sort of manages clinical scientist careers, particularly in medical physics and radiation, and but also in engineering and computing as well. We are the only distance learning master's course in the country that are accredited by IPEM. That accreditation is a key part of careers for students who want to become clinical scientists in future. Part of what's known as the Route 2 method of becoming a clinical scientist, where you gain a master's and you'll also need an on-the-job clinical expertise component as well in order to get registered as a full-time clinical scientist eventually. So we provide one of the excellent options for studying that academic component you need as part of that career, and it allows you to do it remotely and asynchronously in a time that sort of suits you as well. So we've got a history of excellence since the course started, and we've had personal tutoring nominations for teaching awards at UCL in 3 years, including last year, which was very good. So we want to focus on our students, and a key part of the distance learning courses we see it is good personal tutoring as well. So the degree itself, as I said, it follows the radiation physics stream of the MSc that is run here on campus in London. Um, there's a number of options that students commonly take when studying the distance learning route. You can study full time. A full-time master's degree is 1 year. So if you started in September, you would finish in August 2027. There's also part-time options. In UCL terminology, that means that you study at half the speed. Essentially, you take 2 years to study the master's. This is usually for students that are working full-time and studying in their spare time. And there's also a very popular option which is called flexible study, where you can take up to a maximum of 5 years to complete the master's. You can choose the number of modules you want to study each year based on your personal circumstances that year. So some students have a plan to complete the master's more slowly over 3 or 4 years, and other students still study over 2 years, but maybe they change their plans halfway through studying. We'll talk about that in a moment, a little bit later. But those are the three options to study on the course. The last two, of course, are based for students who don't have the available study time to study full time, usually because they're working themselves in a job. Um, so in general, the distance learning course, I would recommend that you as students do interact as much as possible with other students in the course. Group work is an excellent way for you to sort of share your understanding and overcome difficulties. But it is possible to study alone. Some students do that. There's no requirement necessarily for you to study most of your modules. But you're very happy to work alone, but we do encourage methods for you to interact with other students and work together. Finally, although it's a distance learning degree, we do have students actually who are based here in London that are making use of the fact that other course is available to study at any time. So if you're working in a job that prevents you from being able to attend a lecture live because it's on a Monday morning and you're working on a Monday morning, then this is an option for you. So for students like that, you still have the option actually of coming to London to come to some lectures if you like. You might come to London to see some labs. And indeed, we do even have international students who say, "Oh, I'd be quite interested in coming doing that lab coursework in person." So then they can fly to London and take part of that as well. Just because you're a distance learning student, you're not excluded from any of the opportunities that our on-campus students have as well. So it's up to you on that side. Um, So yeah, let's go on and have just a quick look at some of the examples of students that we might see that join the distance learning. I would say that there's sort of three common routes. We can get the examples like Hannah here on the left, who is someone who's working currently in a hospital or looking to work in a hospital environment as a clinical scientist. They might be a trainee and they're looking to get their master's qualification that they need to get their registration as a clinical scientist. And so generally they might, because they're working full time, they'll need the part-time option. Sometimes the hospital they're working for might give them a day's study leave a week. That's fairly common. And then they can easily complete the master's in 2 years part-time. We also get students who maybe are not specialists in physics or medical physics at all, radiation physics, but want to specialize in that as a career and later. So perhaps they've come in with a biomedical engineering, with a mechanical engineering or other types of engineering degrees. They don't maybe have a job that is in clinical science or in radiation physics, but they'd like to get into it. And so those are what I'd call the converters, the people who want to specialize into our subject area. And that's completely fine as well. And they can also use the MSc to study that way. So students might not be interested necessarily in becoming a hospital clinical scientist, but are looking for extra training in physics and engineering and medicine. So they can get all that expertise as part of our masters as well. And then we might have another student type here on the right, Sanjay, who might even be from a computer science background. So we get students with various different backgrounds, but again, want to specialize into perhaps medical imaging or various other methods, AI methods, and things like that are taught as part of our degrees. They might be available to study full time over the year, but they're not available to come to London for whatever reason. There's a variety of reasons why students might not want that, but they want to study from home, for example, where you can do that as a master's student on our distance learning degree as well. So, most commonly, the three different examples that we see of students, but there's all different varieties and variations of these as well. But we have backgrounds in students with backgrounds in physics and mechanical engineering, in medicine. They might be from the more technical subjects, radiography and things like that as well. So there's a large variety here. The strength of the program overall, I would say, is that it's flexible for you as students, and that means flexible in a number of ways. You can choose, as we've already shown, the number of years you want to complete the masters. That will generally be based on how much study time you've got available each week to study. So if you don't have a full week available, then you can take a smaller number of modules. And indeed, if you're on the flexible program, you can choose to even study one or two modules a year. That's hopefully an easier burden for you as you study. It also allows you to change your plans in future years. Many of our students are what we'd call mature students, which doesn't mean that you're very old. Often they're 24, 25. But it does mean that you've got a personal life in some way. So perhaps you've got a family, perhaps you've got a work life. All of these things can affect your ability to study in subsequent years. The course is flexible to allow you to do that. So if a family situation comes up and you need to have a year out, that's possible as part of our masters. So that's part of the flexibility. In general, you'll repeat the same sort of structure each year, which is what this diagram on the right is showing you. Essentially, you enroll at the start of the year in September. You'll be studying your modules at regular times throughout the year. You'll have tutorials at the same time each year, and then you'll have most of your exam assessments in May. And then in the summer, you can rest or prepare for future years, and then come in the second year and do the same. And however many years it takes to complete the masters, you repeat that same loop until hopefully the whole course is finished. Um, the second way that the course is flexible is that it's asynchronous, which I've already mentioned once before. Asynchronous means in this case not at the same time. So lectures on campus are synchronous. In other words, you have to be available to come to the lecture at 10 a.m. because that's when the lecturer is in there giving that lecture. Asynchronous means that you can study at any time. So all our resources, which are based around videos of the lectures that are recorded on campus, they're available for you for the whole year, basically. So you can study them at any time you like. Now, we give you good guidance to help you go through that, but it does mean that if your personal life gets in the way for whatever reason, you have a very busy week at work or whatever else, even going on holidays, sometimes a thing that students do, then you can catch up weeks you've missed later. So that flexibility is also in the week-to-week study as well as the year-to-year look at it. So what is taught in our program? So I've mentioned already it's a course that specializes in radiation physics and it meets the IPEM accreditation requirements for the physicist route as well. So I'll just quickly go through some of the modules. Now, I've mentioned there are different ways that students study. So generally we have modules that are well good to study in your first year, whenever you're taking that. And there are modules that are good to study in your final year. So first year, the foundational modules, things that you will learn in ionizing radiation physics and medical imaging with ionizing radiation that might feed into future modules and future years. Now, if you're a full-time student, you do them all in the same year anyway, so that's no problem. Um, and then final year modules are things like the research projects. So there's two research projects as part of our course. Your individual master's research project, MSc project, that's worth 60 credits. So it's a third of the master's weighting, and you spend a good amount of time on an individual research topic of your own. There's also the medical device enterprise scenario, which is the group research project that you do as part of the course. So you'll be working with a group of students on campus in a medical device enterprise scenario. I'll talk about that in a minute, though, in a bit more detail. So what's in the other modules? Ionizing radiation physics in first year or whenever you take it will be a module that looks at the interactions of ionizing radiation, usually X-rays, but also gamma rays and other methods like that as well, and particularly looking at the detection and the measurement of those as well. So we look at the design of detectors of all the different ionizing radiation types. Medical imaging with ionizing radiation covers X-ray imaging, it covers CT, it covers nuclear imaging, including SPECT and PET. It also looks at a bit of radiation protection for imaging as well. So we need to make sure that when we're using radiation in clinical environments, we're not going to harm patients or workers, and that's part of that course at the same time. That course is foundational, so the reason why it's in first year is because it also includes an overview of imaging theory that is useful in all the other imaging modalities as well. So how do we determine image quality and things like that? Then options in the middle year, why these are marked as options. So you have to do all of these modules to pass the degree, but the option is to choose, if you're a flexible student, which year you'd like to study them in. So some people have got a specialism that they think, oh, I'd love to do MRI up first, in which case it might be a good option for you there. So MRI and biomedical optics is a module that splits roughly in half, and they're both non-ionizing radiation methods of particular interest to our department. Um, the biomedical optics half is a real specialism of our department, a world-leading specialism, I would say, as much as anything else. That includes using lasers in various kinds of imaging, but also treatment methods at the same time. So photoacoustic imaging is a particular expertise of the department, and I encourage you to have a little look up that of the work that's been done in our department over the years, if you're interested. Some really interesting new imaging methods that are being used in hospitals and yeah, very applicable and quite cheap compared to some of the other imaging methods as well. Um, there's also a module here, you've got clinical practice, which is a look essentially at medical devices that are usually electronic that might be used in hospitals and teaching you some of the electrical safety that we need to comply with when looking at those medical devices. It also includes an anatomy and physiology course that's designed for physicists like yourself or like me, perhaps. It's not a course that's at the level of a doctor student or a medicine student, but it gives you the overall basis that you will need to understand the various imaging methods and how they apply, but also radiotherapy treatments and things like that as well. And then other imaging methods, biomedical ultrasound, that is used for imaging as well, but there's also groups in our department that are using it for therapy methods of various kinds as well. So you'll learn about that as part of the biomedical ultrasound course. Radiotherapy physics is, I guess, one of the focuses of the course at the end. It is a radiation physics course, and we're trying to teach the different methods that are the latest versions of treating cancers, usually in using radiation. And so you'll cover a bit of a background of radiation biology, of how radiation affects cells, and then go into the mixture of the different radiotherapy treatment methods that actually includes X-ray treatments at high energy and lower energy. It will look at brachytherapy, so methods of putting radioactive sources inside tumors and how do we use those to treat cancers. But also proton therapy is a big specialist in our department because we've got the Proton Therapy Center, which is right next door at UCLH, and so that's a big focus of that module as well. And then finally, computing in medicine is a module that's teaching you to use modern computing methods to analyze things like images. It's a course that teaches you to do some programming. So if you've never done any programming before, that will teach you what you need to know to hopefully analyze your data in a bit more of a thorough way in future. And if you've got an example, if you've already done some coding before, then we're teaching you basically to do some advanced medical imaging analysis, the kind of thing that is really common today in the workplace as well. So a typical year studying by DL, what does it look like overall? You'll start off in September. That's usually the first week of the academic year, the end of September. And we have an induction program that's a key part of that. Again, I mentioned before that a lot of students who join the course have not studied by distance learning before. So we're trying to teach you exactly how we do it. During the pandemic, every course went online, I suppose. And I think there was different various degrees of success that we saw. And maybe some of you experienced about studying online. I will say that we have an expertise and we have designed our programs to work as online. So we're trying to show you from the start, as part of this induction program, how we help you develop skills to study effectively online at the same time. It is more than just the lecture videos. So this is what the induction is really there for. It gives you a chance to meet your course mates. It gives you a chance to meet the personal tutor, which is likely going to be me for next year. And then you choose your modules at the start of the year as well. So if you're a flexible or a part-time student, you can have a discussion about what might best suit you. And then the induction course basically teaches you the basics of distance learning. And ideally, it's a learn by doing process. So rather than just reading about all these things, we give you some samples for you to have a chance to have a go yourself. So you get an example of the first tutorial exercise you'll do where you get to study a video of a lecture of an academic and then write up some notes, answer some questions. There'll be some data analysis as part of that task as well. We'll ask you to use the online library to look up research articles and such things, essentially giving you a sample of the kind of thing you'll be doing later in the course rather than me just telling you, you get to go yourself. And then you submit that work and I'll mark it and we meet the following week to review that work. And that process is repeated throughout the academic year and the rest of the course as well. So the induction in September gives you that foundation to show you what it's going to be like. Then week to week study, generally you'll be studying your modules from October through to the end of March. There are some variations here if you're full-time or part-time. If you're a full-time student, then you study modules, usually you complete a module in one term. So you study 4 modules in first term and then 4 modules in second term. If you're a part-time student, we can actually take advantage of the fact that we've got asynchronous materials here. So rather than force all the teaching in one module into one term, we found it's much better for students to spread it out over 2 terms instead. So if you have a little look on the right of the screen, this is an example of the study plan we've got for a couple of modules, ionizing radiation physics. And you can see you start studying lectures with me, photon interactions in October, but then you keep studying after December in the same module. So essentially you spread out the study rather than study 4 hours per week on one module. You instead study 2 hours per week and spread it over both terms instead. And that means that if you have a week at work where you're particularly busy and you're unable to keep up and study the recommended materials for that week, then it's much easier to catch up because you've only missed 2 hours. Essentially, it has led our experience of running the course. It's led to better outcomes for our students and allows you to easily catch up. And you can also go ahead. You're completely available to do that as well. Um, on top of that, the programs, as I say, the course is not just the lecture videos. It also includes a lot of other materials. We want you as students to be active in your studying as much as possible. It's important that you're not just watching videos or reading textbooks. You need to do something that's much more active yourself. That's the best way for you to actually embed that learning and help you remember it and understand it. So self-study problems are regularly found throughout all the topics, little bits and pieces for you to review. How do you understand this? And they range in size, usually quite small though. As well as that, you get the online reading that's recommended for each chapter of the course, online e-textbooks from the UCL library, and academic papers that support your work as well. Um, Now, again, it's very normal for students to have a variable study rate, particularly on the distance learning. There's almost certainly a reason why you wanted to study distance learning, and it's often flexibility needed. So if you can, if you like, go against our recommendation of this study guide on the right, where we say complete these topics by these weeks. It's largely up to you. But yeah, the important thing, I suppose, is to meet the checkpoints that we have for tutorial deadlines. Um, so on the right of the screen here, I'll just show you, this is some examples where you can share work with other students. We've got lots of forums for those little tasks that you do week by week, where you can just upload and see, am I doing this correctly? Ideally, this is replicating the same experience you get. If you're on campus in my lecture theatre, then I'll often set a task in the lectures, and then you can lean over and talk to your classmate and say, how did you do that? Oh, I'm stuck here. Can you help me? This is a way for you to interact with other students as an online student. And there's a number of different ways. So forums are an example where you've got extensive work, but we've also got a question board, which is a place that you can anonymously put questions at any time during the year. You can talk to other students, and we ask the lecturers to come in and answer questions on that on a regular basis as well. So tutorials I mentioned before. So each module that you will study, we set 3 fixed tutorial review tasks that you do throughout the year. And that allows you to review your understanding in these topics and get some feedback from the personal tutor to see how well you're doing, a very important part of studying as well. So again, they'll tend to be in November, February, and March. Sometimes these tasks will count towards the final mark of a module, i.e. what we call coursework, but often they are informal learning exercises that are, in theory, not compulsory. But if you want to succeed on the program, you need to make sure that you're getting feedback to check whether you're meeting the standard for masters, ideally before the exams. So that's the purpose of these, to give you lots of regular feedback from us. Those tutorial exercises include a range of different tasks. There's problem solving, sort of mathematical style problem solving. There might be literature reviews looking through scientific research papers. There's data analysis, which is very common, using Excel or using MATLAB or Python, depending on where you're going. There's a use of research software. There's certainly programming that can be part of the course, and it's a good thing to learn. And then also, we want everyone to pass the course at the end of the day. We want everyone to do well in the exams at the end of the year. So sometimes those tutorials are just exam question practice and getting feedback on how to answer the exam questions in a thorough way. So generally, work gets submitted by you guys. It will be marked and then reviewed with a personal tutor via Teams or telephone the following week. So again, getting some feedback that's written on your work, but also a meeting afterwards to discuss any problems you've had and go over them. On top of that, the personal tutor, which is me, are available throughout the year to solve any other to solve any problems you've got at any other time as well. So the tutorial system is a structure to make sure that you're hitting these three regular points throughout the year. But it's worth saying that that is not the only time you can speak to me as personal tutor. We encourage lots of dialogue between us, not just me, but with all the other lecturers actually as well. Recommend you send emails. Lecturers in our department are very used to getting messages from distance learning students. So, you know, do ask for help wherever you possibly can get it. And we can arrange extra meetings where we discuss things that you might be struggling with if you'd like as well. Some students I speak to every week. Other students are very happy studying and go happily go silent in terms of interactions with me between the tutorials. That's completely up to you. But yeah, there's a range of different things that you can experience there and help you can get. And then exams are all in term three for our departments, which is usually in May or potentially June as well, at the start of June. So the exams that you get as a distance learning student are the same as the campus exams that we run here in person. Um, the difference is that they're all sat online inside at the Assessment UCL platform. That's not too complicated right now. The current process essentially is that you still have a timed exam, exactly the same as you would do if you were sitting in the exam hall. The exam paper is released at the start of the exam, and then you get 2 hours plus some extra time to collect your work, to submit your answers back into the Assessment UCL platform. The difference that you do have as an online student is that these exams, that when they're online, they are open book. So there is no expectation. You're allowed to use any of your notes essentially whilst you're studying. The difficulty is that it's still a timed exam, so you do not have time to look everything up in the same way as you would with a coursework. So you need to treat them the same. But yeah, those exams are open book rather than sort of invigilated, as we would call on campus, where you're not allowed to use any other resources at the same time. So most modules have got exams. All modules have got some form of coursework as part of it as well that is not under timed conditions. It's usually around 20% of the module for each module. So there'll be smaller tasks, sometimes 10% each if they're are much shorter, and they might be slightly longer, 20 or even 30% in one or two modules. Now, these coursework tasks, where they count towards the final modules, they're integrated into the same tutorial structure that I mentioned before. So sometimes those tutorials will just be a coursework because they're also very good for you to review your learning in the modules as well. That's ultimately the purpose of a coursework. So when you're in your final year of study, whichever year that is, you'll be studying your master's research project. So that actually runs from October through to August throughout the whole year. So you get a lot of time in our department to do as much research as you possibly can, and hopefully, get some really good outputs by the end of it. It's worth four taught modules in weighting. As I say, it's worth one third of the total degree. And there's a number of different ways that distance learning students take their research projects. You've got different options open to you. You can just select a project that's from the project proposal list that's submitted by our academics here on campus, which is exactly how all our on-campus students are assigned master's projects. So you've still got the same ability to apply for those projects that way. There will be some projects that you won't be able to do remotely. For example, if you want to go into the electron microscopy lab for Dr. Patazzo, he will likely need you to be here in London to do that. But many projects are available where you just take the data that someone else has collected and you do the analysis for it. And then as a master student, you're part of that research group and you can interact with that research group and find ways to improve methods and even collect more data afterwards as well. So that's one of the more straightforward ways. But regularly for distance learning students, if you have access to a clinical environment, i.e., do you work in a hospital, then it'll often be to your benefit to do a research project that actually benefits the work you're doing in the hospital. And so that is the other most common way that master's projects are done for our distance learning students. We will work with you to develop a research project based there. And so for that, we'll give you a supervisor that's got the same expertise area that you need for your research project locally. And then we'll find you a local supervisor, ideally in your hospital, to uh, support you as you complete your master's project. The master's project module has got regular assessments that you do throughout the year that check on your progress and make sure that everything's going well. And then ideally, at the end of every master's project, we want the students to publish papers wherever it's possible, and then maybe even stay for a PhD afterwards. These things aren't guaranteed, but that is the purpose and expectation of master's projects, which is slightly different to undergraduate projects. So we do want you to contribute really to the research being done by our department. And we want you to hopefully, innovate and make a contribution to the research field. And then finally, you've also got this group project, which is a research project as well, the Medical Device Enterprise. This is a picture from a couple of years ago that shows a lecture being given on campus as part of this module. The Medical Device Enterprise scenario is a module where you work in groups and you are set at the start of the year a medical problem to solve by inventing a new medical device and then making a business plan to take that medical device to market and sell it. So it's a wonderfully open-ended project for you guys as students. You will be working in a group with students that are based here in London on campus as well. There's always distance learning students and part-time students in every group. So we're very used to providing structures that help support you and encourage the interactions in that way. But it's a creative task that is student-led. So it's up to you to sort of see how you can look through all the various literature that might be helpful, look online, look and speak to patient groups even. We see regular interactions that way to come up with good ideas to solve medical problems using medical devices. So there's a different task every year. So two examples of recent years have been COVID support devices was obviously a popular one a few years ago. This device, it's a bit hard to see exactly what it is on the center left of the screen was an electrical stimulator that was attached to the abdomen of the patient, and it would stimulate the muscles using electrical shocks to give patients who are particularly weak the strength that it might need in those muscles to cough. Particularly in COVID, we found out there were a number of patients who were struggling eventually to clear their airways, and coughing is very hard when you're quite weak due to lack of oxygen. And so you can stimulate the muscles directly using this electrical stimulator. And that was a way of supporting that. And that was a fantastic device that was backed up by research and literature that was found at various institutions, and just a really interesting project that was applied at the end. This one on the right, that year, the problem that was set was to find some technology for the visually or hearing impaired. And this little device that looks like a computer mouse, in fact, has got a scanner underneath it, and it rolls over any text, and then it translates that text automatically in these little silver buttons that are just on top into Braille. So, little bubbles move up and down, and it turns it into a Braille reader essentially for any kind of device. So, a really nice little thing there. And as part of this project, you're not just designing the device itself, you're also working at the business side. So, you need to work at how much the materials will cost, how much the manufacturing will cost, work out how much you're going to sell these devices to actually make your device company profitable. You also need to make sure that you're complying with the various regulations. So that device that was providing electric shocks to the patient, you need to look particularly at making sure that even if they're shocking the patient, that it's being made safe. And there's various medical device regulations that are part of that. Ideally, that at the end of the project, you produce a business report that you could give to an investor that you can say, look, here's our idea, here's how we implement it, and then go away and do it. And that may be something that's hopefully of interest to you. Lots of students tend to really enjoy that project, and you as distance learning students get to take part in it as well. If you'd like to know a little bit more about our department in terms of research that's being done, I would recommend there's a department podcast called Röntgen's Radio, named after the man who discovered X-rays. where it's an interview show basically where an academic and department's being interviewed about their research, and it includes a number of different topics. It's very consumable, so you don't need to be a high expert in any of these subjects to understand it. So I'd strongly recommend having a look here. There's a QR code on the screen, but look us up otherwise. Röntgen's radio. I mean, it's named after Röntgen, but it's actually quite hard to search in text because that O umlaut is quite difficult. So if you type ROE instead, you'll sometimes find that also gets you to the podcast, but it's available on SoundCloud and on Apple Podcasts. So I recommend having a listen to some of those if you're interested and want to find out more about department research. So, as a distance learning student as well, it's worth saying that you are physically isolated often from the department, but you're still very much a member of the department throughout the year, and you're entitled to the same resources that our students use on campus. So, we encourage you strongly to email and speak to your lecturers. The more you interact with us, the better you'll end up doing on the degree, certainly. You'll also get invited to the monthly research seminars that happen sometimes at lunchtime and sometimes in evenings. They're often available to join online, so you can join that as well, and we encourage that. You can make use of UCL careers resources and support student support teams as well that are very helpful. So if you're, I'm sure everyone doing a master's degree is interested in careers in various ways. There's good ways to support you there, either in terms of finding jobs, but also enhancing and upgrading your CV. There's a giving you advice about interviews. There's a lot of good resources that UCL provides uh, as part for all its students actually, and that includes you. And again, you're welcome to come and visit London and join events in person if you'd ever like. But none of that's compulsory. Obviously, you'll be studying by distance. That might be difficult for some students. So yeah, we want you to collaborate with other students in the department, but also our researchers. You know, as a department we are among the world leading research groups that are available in our subject. So you should take advantage of that by coming and talking and interacting as much as you can with those groups and learning. And it may set up connections that you can use in your future career as well. After you graduated, what can you do? Well, in theory, anything, because we're an engineering subject, which is incredibly applied, and lots of different career paths are looking for people with engineering training generally. But probably most common that we see from students that finish the course are students that go in, become clinical scientists in hospitals. We get students that go into medical device startups, as you can kind of see. We do some training on the medical device enterprise, and there's a medical device technology group in the department, a student-led society. So that may be a good way for you to join there. There are graduate schemes in the various of the medical device companies, usually the bigger ones, that you might go on and join. But another very common career path is that students want to become researchers, and so maybe they join PhD programs, including our department as well. And again, I recommend strongly the UCL Engineering Careers team who can help with advice on any of this. Entry requirements of the course. So what do you need to be able to apply? Well, we're looking for students who've got a 2-1 in a UK bachelor's degree or international equivalent in a related subject, as we say. So physics, engineering, computer science, mathematics, or other closely related. So we do accept students, as I said, from the technologies background as well. It kind of varies on your expertise. I will say that you should make the case that of your interest and your passion for the subject generally. And finally, notes that it is a physics and engineering course, so you will be have to do some physics and mathematics as part of the course. So you should be prepared for that if you are from the more medical or technical backgrounds as well. It is an engineering course, so you do need to be able to have those skills. We do sometimes accept students with a 2-2 as well. There are a set of criteria we've got that allows that as well, which is based on perhaps if you've got workplace experience, which is relevant. Do you have relevant modules in an undergraduate degree that might support your application otherwise? Or do you have very good research history in some way that might contribute to your application? So if you've got any questions about that, feel free to email the inbox, which is on the Prospectus website. Finance-wise, the fees you can find here. There's also different methods that you might help fund your studies. The UK government has a postgraduate student loan scheme, which helps support that. And UCL has a variety of different scholarship schemes. They're all central ones, not from our department, but you would need to apply for them before you join the course, just so you know. So there's a number of different ones there. The Global Master Scholarship, as well as the Master's Bursary. They're generally means tested in some way. That might be from your financial background, or it might be from your financial, your educational excellence and your background in some way, so a direct scholarship. But there's a number of different ones in there that will apply to different students. And just noting again that if you want to apply for those, you should start thinking about them with your application. The deadlines, as I was showing, are before the start of the academic year. Right, I'm doing time-wise. I've gone on quite a long way, so that's good. So I think what I'll do, I've got some questions here we can discuss, but I would encourage any of you, if you want to stay in touch and learn more about the department, our link tree is available here on the screen currently, and various different ways that you can find out about what's going on in the department on a week-to-week basis, or and including research groups, but also the teaching as well. So with that, I think I'll finish. I'll ask, does anyone have any questions? If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and I'll go do my best to go through them. Great. So I'll start us off. So first question I've got. So for the flexible module option, are there set entry dates per module, or is it flexible entry? Um, Yeah, so and the same for part-time mode. Yeah, so the way that it works in terms of choosing modules at UCL is that you register for modules at the start of the academic year. So in September, or actually I think the first week in October is the final deadline. You need to select how many modules you're taking that academic year. If you're flexible, um, it does mean that you can change the number of modules you study each year, but you basically, at the start of the academic year, you commit to taking a certain number of modules. And then once you're registered on those modules, you do need to actually finish those modules that year. There are ways that you can defer assessments in theory as well, extenuating circumstances, so illness. There's also a provision in there for those of you that are working, where if you have a substantial change to your working circumstances, then you can ask for deferrals as well. But in general, once you register on a module, you are committed to complete them that year as well. So it's the same for part-time mode. You still need to register on the modules at the start of the year in September for all modes, basically. Next question. Is there any difference between the distance learning one and the non-distance learning one, especially in terms of the course content? For example, I found that less choices of courses available in the distance learning one. For example, I can't find programming foundations for medical image analysis in the distance learning. Yes, that is correct actually as well. So the distance learning course is a fixed diet of modules. So it follows only the radiation physics version of the MSc, which is the IPEM accredited one. So um, it's quite a lot of work to monitor and make sure these are all up to date on a regular year, basically. So most modules are not available by distance learning, and that includes ones like the programming foundations module that you mentioned there. Um, if you are local to London, then there are possibilities to do what we call a hybrid version, essentially, where you might still be registered to come and do some modules on campus, but there are not distance learning versions of every single master's module in the department. Because it takes too much work to maintain ultimately for us. So yeah, you are fixed to this diet, which is the radiation physics diet, if you're on the distance learning course. Is the GRE or IELTS required for MSc admissions? Yes. So yeah, I think this is talking about language requirements to join the course. Yeah, you should have a look actually. Let me if I'm sharing my screen, there's the graduate prospectus which you should have a look at. Just give me a moment and I'll share my screen. If you type up R UCL and then the name of our course into Google. That's often one of the easiest ways of getting that. But let me share my screen. Naomi, perhaps if you got the access to the link to the prospectus page as well, that might be helpful for some students. But so this is our prospectus page for the course, and if you scroll down, you'll see entry requirements and then English language requirements for the course. So if you're not a UK citizen, or if you're not from a majority English language speaking country, then you may be required to do an English language test as well. And you can have a look. Further information about the English language requirements are here. our course entry is level two that we require in terms of the test you would need to provide. There are some countries that are accepted from needing to take an English language test if you're citizens of those countries. There are also exceptions if you've done a degree in an English language in recent years as well. But yeah, the qualifications you can see in terms of English language test results, you can sort of see down here. And there's a variety of different tests that you can pass, including the IELTS test as well. But yeah, so we're level two, so you need to pass the test to this level to be admitted to the course. Okay. So, next question. What are the differences between the three streams, like compulsory courses? What is the compulsory module and selected modules for the biomedical and image processing streams? Yeah, so that's a question really, I suppose, for the main masters that we have on campus, not just the distance learning. There was a recording of that session last week, I believe. We should be able to put it on our department YouTube page where we describe some of it. But the three streams broadly, because I do run those courses as well. The radiation physics stream is one, which is the same modules that I've just been showing here, which gives a focus in radiotherapy and ionizing radiation imaging, perhaps to a higher level than you might do on the other streams. Um, the biomedical engineering and medical imaging route gives you different options, basically. So you can study more modules, if you like, in electronic biomedical engineering. You can study more modules in some material biomedical engineering as well. You can also study more computing-based biomedical engineering modules. So there's some different focuses on there. But if you want to see exactly more, I would recommend having a look at the department prospectus page, and it tells you the list of modules there. If you want to know what other module options there are and what is precisely in some of the modules, the UCL module catalog is public. So if you go to the prospectus page, basically it will have a list of the module options that are on any of the streams. You can usually click on those and it will take you to the module catalog. But you can also look up any module in our department by looking up the UCL module catalog at the same time. So yeah, there's some various options that you can follow up there as well. Let me go to the questions. Any other questions we've got? How many optional modules can I take in the path of radiation physics? So if you're studying by distance learning, then the modules are fixed. So you need to study all the modules that I showed before on the screen. There's 9 modules in the masters, and yeah, 8 taught modules as we call it, which are lecture based, and then one module which is the research project. So you'll need to do that option. If you're on campus, then there is a non-accredited radiation stream, which basically means you won't get the IPEM accreditation, but it allows you a bit of flexibility to choose a different module the way you want to. So in that case, most students will swap out one of the modules or two of the modules and do something more advanced. So that's very common to swap out computing and medicine and choose a more advanced computing module, perhaps if they're interested in that. But the radiation physics stream, the core part is that you must do the imaging modules and you must do the radiotherapy physics module because that's what makes it the radiation physics stream itself. Okay. Does anyone have any more questions? Great. Can see another one. If I'm a British citizen with the British passport, do I still need to go through the English lang test requirements for the entry? No, you don't. Yeah. You don't need to pass an English language test if you're already a British citizen. But again, if there are a lot of students with different mixes of backgrounds, perhaps they've lived in different countries, or, it depends on what their is. You can look that up, but the general default is if you work and live in Britain, then you don't need to do the test generally. Yeah. Okay, one more question. After finishing the Pathway of Radiation Physics in the distance learning course, can I guarantee the IPEM registration? Yes, so the IPEM registrate. So there's two types of registration technically. So our course is accredited by IPEM, which means that if you complete the masters, then you get that accredited masters course, which is the academic component you need to become registered as a clinical scientist. In the UK, to become registered as a clinical scientist, which includes as a hospital medical physicist, it includes hospital radiotherapy planners, lots of other specialties in there as well. To get that career path, you would normally then become a trainee of in what is called a trainee position in there. So a trainee dosimetrist, a trainee medical physicist, a trainee radiotherapy planner, and then you get the on-the-job experience that you need to build your portfolio and then register as a clinical scientist. The body you register as a clinical scientist is called the Healthcare HCPC, so the Healthcare Professionals Council, essentially, that includes all the different types of uh, professional bodies that don't just include medical physics, but other things as well. So does it guarantee you the clinical registration? You're not at the clinical registration point after you finish the masters, unless you've also got the on-the-job portfolio that you build up. And this is in the UK, every single person that works in this field has built up one of those portfolios. So you do need, it's a normal way of doing that. Those positions that I mentioned that are called trainee positions, they are still jobs that are paid and they're very normal. They're just the junior level jobs. So when you've spent a good amount of time training in those positions and you get your full registration as a clinical scientist, then you can go for the higher level jobs after that, the senior medical physicist and roles and etc. And I happen to know that the UK currently has a lot of posts available at that higher level. It's partly due to the way that about 15 years ago, the training here in the UK, the number of spots for training medical physicists in the country dropped massively from the government scheme. And so the Route 2 scheme was set up as a way to allow students to do it themselves. There is currently a need for medical physicists in the UK because about 15 years ago, there were a number of people, there was a lack of training basically happening. So those 5 years worth of students never developed. So there's a bit of a gap in our industry right now. But yeah, interesting topic. One last question. So yeah, if I fail in one of the modules, when can I resit the assessment and how many times am I allowed to resit it? Never apologize for more questions. Always happy to answer more questions. We want you to guys to have a full understanding of anything, particularly before you apply for a course. So yeah, if you fail, then normally an exam that you would take in May, if you fail an assessment, you'll be asked to take a second attempt in the late summer assessment period, which is August. The last 2 weeks of August or the first week of September is where that currently is. So you are allowed by UCL regulations two attempts at any assessment. Once you've had that, if you fail still, then you aren't allowed to take a third attempt. Um, there there are possibilities. There's all kinds of complications that can sometimes come up. So if you get a deferral for an exam, for example, if you're unwell during the exam, you can get a deferral, and that does not count as one of your attempts. But you would then take your first attempt in the summer, in the late summer assessments. If you were to fail that, then you would get another attempt at the next opportunity, which would be the following summer, basically. So there are two exam periods at UCL, one in May and sort of June, and then one in August, September. So that's where you would have it. Hopefully that answers that question. Um, okay. Does anyone have any more questions? Feel free to ask more. Okay, I don't think there are any more. So with that, I think we'll close the session. But yeah, thank you very much for attending today. If you've got any more questions or would like to know more about the program, then feel free to get in contact with us in the department. Again, if you go to the graduate prospectus page, there's an email address that you can contact there. That's probably the easiest way of getting in touch. It'll go through to our teaching administration team initially, and then they can forward your question to whoever's the most relevant person to answer it, which may well be me. So yeah, feel free to ask more questions if you've got them. There's plenty of time at this time of the year before the application deadline, so you've got about 6 months or maybe more. So lots of times in theory to make a decision, but in general, I would advise applying early is probably the best idea if you've already made the decision what you want to do. Um, in theory, there are a limited number of places. The distance learning course, an advantage of it to some extent, is that we're not going to have problems fitting you into a lecture theatre because you are all studying remotely. But there are still potentially course limits, so I would encourage people to apply early if you can. Okay, very nice to talk to some of you in the questions, and hopefully I'll see you all next year in September. Bye then.